Greetings YouTube. Strange things happened today. It's actually sunny, which I'm really shocked about, but there you go. This video is about if you're buying a bike on a budget, like I did, being a student. Now anyone who knows me will know that I've got quite a lot of experience. Been riding over 23 years, and it's my 43rd bike, and I've made a lot of mistakes in the past, and hopefully I've ironed them out now. It seems to be this one, so you'll have to forgive me. I've actually made some notes for this video, so yeah. First of all, suggest you buy a bike on a budget. I suppose anything budget you're talking probably below, in my books, £2,500 maybe, or even lower. You know, £1,000, whatever. What you got to do first to get the right bike is to do your homework. That's the most important thing. You know, what bike, what you can ride. In other words, are you tall enough for the bike? It sounds crazy, I'm 5'8". There's some bikes that I'm not tall enough for, and I'm only just tall enough for this Triumph. But I've driven one in the past, so I already knew. Insurance costs, you don't have any nasty surprises. Smaller engines don't always necessarily mean lower insurance costs, because there's often going on stability. So if you're looking at something like an R6, someone's far more likely to steal an R6, well, you know, try and sprint like mine. But you got to remember, bigger bikes are heavy, you know, fuel, tyres, chains, etc. So you've got to take that into consideration, because they are thirsty, definitely. Now, one of the things I've always found is find out what type of owner the bike attracts. You know, it's sometimes helps to be stereotypical. It's not always the case, but it often is. You know, for instance, a bike that's suited to novices, you got to think, you've got to think to yourself, is that bike, you know, if novices had it, that novice may have fallen off, may not maintain the bike properly. They may not know how to chain properly, whatever, change the brakes, all these things can basically be cost for yourself. So it's important to put that. Super sports bikes, you know, who doesn't want super sports bikes? They're fantastic, they're lovely bikes, and you buy them new, whatever, you know, you're going to have a lot of good time done. But if you're going to buy one in that budget range, you know, these bikes, you know, like the R1, the R6, the Blades, whatever, they haven't been owned by Vickers. You know, they've basically, more likely than not, they've had a life, they've had a history, you know, being thrashed, because they've been meant to be thrashed. It may have even been down the road, so it's something to be aware of. I've bought bikes, super sport bikes and that budget before, and it's ended up being quite expensive. So just be worried about that one. Now, large capacity bikes, especially sports tourers like this, or the BMs, whatever, they tend to be a good buy, because it's the type of people who own them tend to be like old people, or older people like myself, who basically cosset the bikes. They've worked their way up there, and you know, they can't afford to be crashing them. And, you know what I'm trying to say? We tend to be a little bit more sensible. God, listen to me, I'm just older. So, another good thing is, when you look at the type of bikes, you look at enthusiast bikes, you look at Triumphs, you look at Guzzies, you look at BMWs. They're not normally owned by somebody who wants to wreck them. So it's just a tip. It's just a tip I've learned. Like, for instance, this 95 Triumph. Here's Mike Hackham saying, "Oh, you're not getting on the video. Are you coming on then?" My 95 Triumph had been owned by one guy, and he absolutely costed it, because everything he wore was Triumph, and you know where I'm coming from. Saying that, anybody who knows bikes know Hondas are the best bikes in the world. Reliability wise, they're fantastic. VFR, that's all I need to say. You get a well maintained VFR, you will not get a better bike. on the planet. It's simple as, even though it's a complicated engine in there, you know, but if that's been maintained, if the door's been maintained, not a problem. Suzuki's Bandit, especially the Mark 1, such an old design, such a perfect design, fantastic bikes, you won't go much wrong with them. Yamaha's Diversion, okay, it's plain, it is plain, I personally don't like it, but if you want a bike that's going to go on forever and not going to cause you any trouble, there you go. As for the big Kawasaki's, you know, the motors in them, they're fantastic. But what I would suggest whenever bikes you're going to get is read the reviews, go to the forums, find out what goes wrong with them, you know, and if it's going to be expensive, you know, for instance on a Triumph like this, the spread clutch could go. Luckily I've got a receipt to know that it's been done, so fingers crossed it'll be okay, but it's something worth looking for because, you know, it might not sound much, but it's an engine oil journey. Check the price of parts, go to eBay, see what sort of price you're charging for parts, you know, fairing panels, brake pads, whatever, because, you know, at the end of the day it's going to make dents in your pocket, so it's worth something. Now, also important, try to listen to what I'm running, so you know what that bike should sound like, so if that bike is going to have any rattles, whatever, if they've all got the same rattle, it's in the character. This bike you go to see sounds different, you know. But normally there's plenty of examples on YouTube of bikes running, so it's not as good as real life, but it's maybe all you get. Now when you're looking for the bike, don't forget to budget for insurance and kit, you know, because that's going to cost, whether you like it or not, it is going to cost. Now eBay these days seems to be the way people buy a bike on that budget. Alright, there are alternatives, but we'll stick with eBay, because that seems to be the typical exemplar. Another good thing about buying off eBay, if you buy from a bike shop, they're going to throw a few £100 on that, because if they've got to do anything, you know, to the bike, they've got to make profit. So I would not recommend buying a cheap bike from the shop, personally. You know, try and do your homework first. Yeah, there is a risk, but you can minimise it. Open the advert, have a look at the seller's feedback. If the seller's got high feedback, 100%, he's probably not going to sell you a duff bike knowingly. He's probably not going to sell you donuts because he knows if he sells a duff bike, he can wreck his eBay account. And if he's got high feedback, he's really not going to want to risk that on purpose. It can't happen by accident, but on purpose. Look at the history of what you sold, because you might go into the history and there might be hundreds of bikes there, so they might be a dealer. That's not always a bad thing though, so don't look at it too much, just so you know where you stand. And if they're lying that they are a dealer, then you need to be asking questions. Also, one thing that annoys me about a lot of eBay adverts is bad grammar and spelling. If they can't take any care in the advert, what care are they taking about the bike? You got to think about that, you know. It doesn't matter whether you're good spell or not, it's a spell check, you know. So if you're a conscientious owner selling a bike, you're going to look into that, you know. Here we go. Yeah, always try and get to see the bike if you can. I couldn't because this bike was in Scotland, so I had to phone the owner, and I got to know him on the phone, and I got to ask him questions. Now, one question I've always found, which is good, is say to them what needs doing to the bike, not does anything need doing to the bike, because the second answer you're going to get a no answer. But if you ask what needs doing to the bike, they will normally turn around and say, well, not much really, there might be the odd scratch, or it might need a tyre, or it might need a service, but they're more likely, to be honest with you, in my experience anyway. As I said, when I phoned up, he turned around and said, well, nothing really, and he was correct. Always ask for the registration plate number, even if you're not going to do a check on it, because if he thinks you're going to do a check on it, if he's a bad lad, he's going to start worrying straight away. You say, can I have the registration number so I can do a check on that bike? He doesn't know what sort of check you're doing. But if he hesitates, you've got to wonder. Even if he says he doesn't remember the registration number, most people who've had a bike for as long as you say will know their registration plate. Sorry, but I don't buy it anyway. Number of owners is a good indicator more than mileage, I think. If you have a bike 12 owners, you can be saying, why is that bike at 12 owners? And it hasn't suited them, or it's not a good bike. 5 owners, so you can understand, but something like 12, the more owners you've got to be getting quite wary, to be honest with you. Don't be put off the age of the bike, seriously, because I've seen bikes destroyed in a year, but I've seen bikes last 20 years, far tinier than year-old bikes. And also older bikes tends to be cheaper insurance and real world performance on the road. They're going to be enough anyway. They're going to be quick enough. There we go. Yeah, as I said, regular oil changes. The bike can do over 100,000 miles. A big bike, well looked after. And I've seen. I once seen sort of VFR 750, 167,000 miles, and it was sounding strong. I wouldn't be surprised if that bike's still going. About a year ago when I seen it, and it was still tight. Also, don't be tempted by something that's too cheap. If something is too cheap, you've got to wonder why. Because you may save £500 on a bike, and then they're spending £700 on consumables, which can easily happen because you can be talking £200 for a set of tyres. If you need changes, sprockets, you need brakes, no good. So I would not necessarily go for the cheapest bike. I've seen adverts people say they lost the documents to the bike. I think that's a lot of crap, to be honest with you. If you're that careless to lose the documents for your bike, especially a big bike, a well looked after bike, you're obviously a careless person. I personally wouldn't buy a bike of that person. Even if they wanted to sell a bike and they had generally lost them, they can pay £25 and get them documents back. So if they haven't got them documents back, I personally will smell a rat, and it seems to be a lacklustre owner. Anyway, I hope that helped. It wasn't a dig of any bike types. I'm just being practical for the low price range. I'm not saying don't go for an R1 or a GS6R. I'm just telling you to be asking you to be realistic. And go for the right bike. So good luck. Thanks for watching.